On today's show, the San Diego Padres, fresh off of slaying the Dodgers Dragon this weekend. How do they follow it up? With a tragic, heartbreaking loss, of course, to the Colorado Rockies, breaking down the Padres' inept offense as they try to come back in this game, the struggles with Manny Machado, and just in general, trying to evaluate the ever so elusive vibes of this team we call the Padres. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, May 14th. As always, I am your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You may be familiar with my baseball-related work over at Just Baseball, where I write about not just the Padres, but general baseball, and also have a podcast about general baseball silliness called Baseball versus the World. New episode up today about my favorite Scott Boras quotes. You can check out this show, though, guys, at LO_Padres on Twitter, and you can check it out wherever you get your podcasts from. And today's episode, I wish it could be a fun one. I wish. And know that there won't be quite rant level on this episode, but there's a lot of frustrations, and I want everyone to, if you'd like, of course, leave your comments. You could DM me on Twitter at Javi, as I mentioned before. It's the type of loss that, like, you know, like the Superman Dark Side meme where, like, he grabs the guy's cape as he's, like, going forward, like a Holt, Holt yourself type of thing. That's what this Padres team has been a lot like this season. It was like that last year. But last year, it was very like they squeezed out a couple wins. And as we've discussed a lot on this podcast ad nauseum, there are so many individual statistical or even just players in level that have been better than last year, right? Like there's been fundamental changes in this team and how they play, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But there's still this feeling of, why are you 22-22 then? You know what I'm saying? You've gotten, dare I say, basically as good of a replacement for Juan Soto as you could have in Juan Soto. You've gotten an even better replacement for Blake Snell and Dylan Cease. You're hitting with runners in scoring position. And you've got Jake Cronenworth making a bounce back. You've got a rookie who's been good immediately in Jackson Merrill. And yet you're still 22-22. Now, don't get me wrong. As I've said on previous shows, I think that it's way too early to litigate the schedule and the win-loss record when we're at this point in the season. But in terms of just the overall vibe of the Padres, I understand that there's a lot of frustration. And last night's loss is like, dare I say, like the mea culpa of frustrating losses for the Padres this season. I know that they've had some others, don't get me wrong. The Phillies sweep when it looked like they were just gone and they were sleepwalking through the series and it was awful. The 9-4 loss to the Colorado Rockies, a few weeks back when they blew the game 9-4. I understand that, but there is something about this game that was very like, what's going on? Like, one, why does this team refuse to go on a run, right? Like, you're about to be 2 games above 500, and then boom, you have this sort of game that happens. Just a really frustrating series of events, guys, and we're going to break it all down. On today's episode, though, guys, it is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Let's get into it, folks. Let's get into the madness, dare I say. First of all, pitching matchup. Kind of the least interesting thing about all of this, but it is one Sir Randy Vasquez for the Padres and one Sir, who the heck was it? Dakota Hudson. I'm sorry, for the Colorado Rockies. Let's start with Randy Vasquez. Randy Vasquez had a pretty good start his last time out, where I thought that he showcased some of his stuff that I think can be better than some of the other guys that are, in the rotation, like your Waldrons, like your Johnny Burritos, like those type of guys. I think that he's shown a little bit more. I think he's shown that he can get whiffs on the fastball, which he did, 5 whiffs on the night, but has a bad game overall, 3 2/3, gives up 8 hits, 5 earned runs, 1 walk, 0 strikeouts. And once again, I must emphasize, this is the Colorado Rockies. I have no idea. This has been going on since 2021. I have no idea why. But the San Diego Padres, since 2021, have made the Colorado Rockies look pretty consistently like a playoff team. It hasn't just been like one weird year where you didn't hit against the team. It happens. I imagine the Dodgers have had a team that randomly, like a middling team like the Reds, that for some reason they finished, 8-8 against or whatever, right? But in his last start, 4 and a third, only gave up 1 earned run, no walks, 6 Ks. One thing he's been good with so far is control. But he just couldn't find the strike zone enough tonight, and they were hitting him. And he gives up 5 earned runs. All the runs coming early from the Rockies, with Eluris Montero getting a single. We then get him. Elhuris, I hope I'm saying that correctly, gets a double then in the top of the 4th inning. Charlie Blackmon gets a single and also steals a base. It's like 40-year-old Charlie Blackmon with like no legs anymore. Is even him. He turns up against the Padres, and then Ezequiel Tovar bringing a single. It should be worth noting that last run, that Jackson Merrill and Fernando Tatis Jr. let a ball drop in front of them at one point, which allows the inning to continue, which was really rough. So really bad defensive miscue by him and Merrill. There's been a lot of those for Tatis this year. Can't lie. Not as much from Merrill, which is impressive considering you're a 18-year-old that is starting center fielder in the major leagues and you're already good and not making weird rookie mistakes usually. But he has not been as great defensively so far this year with Tatis. I think it should go up at some point, but it is worth noting that yes, he's fast. He's got the sprint speed. He's got the reaction time, all that stuff. He's got the arm strength, certainly. We joked about in yesterday's podcast that he pulled up on a throw like he was dying to throw out the Dodgers runner Andy Pages if he ended up going for third. But in general, Tatis has had a lot of weird miscues. I don't know who to blame on that one specifically. It's probably Merrill, maybe, just because usually it's center fielder has the first call, usually, at least from what I've been told, for when it comes to balls like that. But regardless, whoever's fault it was, defensive miscue and allows the inning to continue. And then on the Rockies side, Dakota Hudson, 5 2/3, gives up 3 earned runs on 3 hits, 3 walks, 3 Ks, the tale of threes with Dakota Hudson. But when it comes to bad pitchers, this is what tends to happen with the Padres, is they let them have these games that aren't great. That's not a great stat line, right? His ERA did go down to 6.13, but they have these type of games that you're like, oh, you didn't kill us, though. That's what keeps happening with Rockies starters. I swear. Don't get me wrong, the Padres have hit up them before, and they did so this year, but this is the sign of why it's so frustrating. Why is this guy not having that start that he gets absolutely blown up? We talk about this with James Paxton, but it surely applies to Rockies starting pitching, which has been a issue for as long as I can remember, frankly. When Herman Marquez was their best starting pitcher, and even he had issues and couldn't pitch very well in course. So just really frustrating game from the Padres. And I hate it. There were some positives in this game, though. There were some positives, and there is a little bit of a thing to note when it comes to the Padres and it comes to their team this year, and that's that they usually succeed in moments that they had last night. But I think that there's a difference between looking at it from a team perspective and looking at it from individual perspective. Because individual-wise, Manny Machado, really rough. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the Padres' issues with runners in scoring position and some other miscues that occurred. And like I said, some of the positive notes in just 1 second, guys. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about one of our favorite sponsors as of late, and that is the #1 daily fantasy sports app in the nation, as in where I'm from, the United States nation, with more than 3 million members. That, of course, is PrizePicks. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch those winnings roll in. If you want to take over on Luis Arraez bases, you want to do that because he didn't have a good game? Oh, sorry. Yes, you can. You could absolutely do that if you want to. And also, not on top of baseball, we've got the NHL playoffs. We've got the NBA playoffs, so you can pick each of those players. If you want to go over on, frankly, any stat for Nikola Jokic, you probably will hit on that, right? So you could do all of that over at PrizePicks, guys. They've got something for every sports fan. Whatever your favorite thing is, they've got you covered. They've got plenty of promotions, weekly promotions every week. You could do these community plays and play with some celebrities like Meek Mill, all sorts of stuff over at PrizePicks, and they're rolling out offers all the time, which is great. It's for any of my video game heads, if you know Steam, you know how Steam has all those sales and stuff all the time? Well, this is vaguely slightly like that, you know what I mean, where there's just all these different offers all the time for you to get in on the action, including this one right here, ladies and gentlemen. Just for listening to this podcast, you can use the code LOCKEDONMLB after downloading the app for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB when you first download the app for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are back on today's Locked On Padres podcast. Remember to check us out wherever you get your podcasts from. First team every day, as you know. Okay, so after the Padres find themselves in a 5-1 hole, I'm not going to lie to you. I know that this sounds crazy. I know this sounds dumb. I know, of course, you're saying that now. But I was like, it's only the fourth inning. I actually did have a little bit of hope for the Padres, and they end up coming up pretty big. But as usual, and as has been the case with this Padres team of late, it is not from the players that you are expecting because of how much they're getting paid, because of previous seasons, frankly. I think the pay thing is, dare I say, like, that doesn't always have everything to do with it. Not everything. There's obviously a big component of this because, hey, this is a sport, and in team building, you need to allocate your resources well. So if the player who's getting paid a lot is underperforming, that's one thing. But I do think that the bigger issue here is that the biggest stars on the Padres this year have just not come through. Fernando Tatis Jr. in high leverage situations is one of the best hitters on the Padres this year, so it's hard to get too much on him. But even him, he has some really poor at-bats in this game. He has one strikeout where he's swinging at stuff away from the plate. It seems like his issue has been like the high leverage counts, dare I say, where it's 2 strikes and maybe 0-2, where it's 1-2, stuff like that. And he swings at these pitches where it's not like he chases a ton, like as much as many other players, but there's something about Tatis that like he really has some poor at bats sometimes. And I know that like they just launched the bat tracking speed over on Baseball Savant and stuff like that. And I know that, like, again, I said he's not the worst at whiff rate. In terms of whiff rate, 37th percentile, chase rate 52nd percentile. That he has these frustrating moments though, where you start to wonder. And while the weighted on base, expected weighted on base things, there's been such a differentiation between the two. I do want to point out that it was around like 400, his weighted on base. Like he has like one of the highest expected weighted on bases in baseball. It's gone down a little bit, 0.389 expected weighted on base. So it's been reflected that like this isn't all 100% bad luck on Tatis's part, which is what I want to emphasize. And I bring that up because after that, there is an inning, after the Padres had been, letting up a bunch of runs, Machado grounds out, Profar pops up, and then Xander Bogaerts strikes out. And then before that, Tatis struck out with Luis Ariz on first base. Like, just putting some really poor at-bats together and going down a lot easier. You know what I mean? He's not making contact sometimes on some of these pitches. He's not fouling off pitches as much as we would like. So that's been frustrating with him, but he is not enemy number one in this game. Firstly, though, to get to some of the positives, Jurickson goddamn Profar. I don't know what is going on with this man, and I'm not tired of talking about him. I'm tired of talking about like how to explain it. Because Jurickson Profar currently, for the 2024 Padres, is their leader in Fangraphs F4. Fangraphs WAR. He's batting .320 with a .400 on base, a .517 slugging. Now his BABIP is at .342, and I do think that if you look at some of his advanced stats, like it will go down at some point. Although I've been telling you guys a lot that I don't know if it's going to go down like a lot. So for example, he's kind of reverse of Tatis, weighted on base 403 right now, 358 expected weighted on base. 358 is still very good. Like, it's not like he's getting otherworldly unlucky right now. Hits a home run, 2-run home run, in fact, in this game after Machado gets a walk. And it was really needed because the first 2 at-bats of the bottom of the 6th inning are a strikeout from Jake Cronenworth and a ground out from Tatis. You get the walk from Machado, and, Bogaerts flies out after that. But even still, I do think it is fantastic that you've seen this from Jurickson Profar, which is, again, why it must be emphasized why it's so frustrating. It should not be that players like Jake Cronenworth, Jurickson Profar, and Jackson Merrill are the reason that this team has been an amazing offense, and that the reason that they're being held back is because of Xander Bogaerts, Manny Machado, and Fernando Tatis Jr. Now, I will say, Xander Bogaerts hits a bomb in this game. He's actually the first runner for the Padres to score. I mentioned they were in a 5-1 hole. This is why in the bottom of the 2nd inning, hits one 422 feet. In fact, if you want to get a little bit deep on it, and yes, I'm going to get deep because I am trying to find anything positive when it comes to Xander Bogaerts. First of all, his 2nd home run in 2 straight days. 980 expected batting average, home run in 30 out of 30 ballparks, 111.3 miles per hour exit velocity. That is his hardest hit of the entire year. So not only did he home run in Sunday's game, He also did it in Monday's game, and it was his hardest hit ball of the year. Now, they mentioned on the broadcast that he's actually using an axe bat, which like they changed the knob a little bit basically, and apparently it's more conducive to players that, have had some hand or like wrist issues. So again, I'm not saying he's back, but I'm just saying it's something to keep an eye on, because I do think it means a lot that you hit some of your hardest hit balls, and we saw something change, which has been that you change your bat up a little bit. So maybe that's a sign that he's at least going to be better than the, 76 WRC plus, like super below average player that he's been, to the point where I've made Jose Abreu jokes like for the past few weeks, right? So just saying that is a positive and it should be brought up. And I must also say though, that the offense doesn't stop there. Of course, you get the Profar homer, and then you get Jackson Merrill getting a hit later on in the bottom of the what inning was it? In the bottom of the seventh, Jackson Merrill with a bat flip, it was like the seventh hardest hit ball of the night. It actually like wasn't quite as hard as like Xander Bogaerts, but he does, and he has a nice bat flip. We love Merrill. I love how much of an attitude he has, and I don't mean that in a bad way, like a swagger, I should say, that he has when he plays. He just looks so amped. Even when there's a point, which we're going to get into in a second, when he draws a walk to load the bases and Luis Campusano comes up. I can't vouch for it necessarily, but if anyone could tell me, it looked like he was looking at Campusano like, let's go, man. You know what I mean? It's your time. Like, let's do this. You know what I mean? And after this inning, after the Merrill home run, you get a Campusano walk, you get a Ha-Seong Kim walk, and this is where the tragedy and why last night's game was so frustrating, why everyone was tweeting so much rage stuff, and why, frankly, I was tweeting like the Vegeta in the rain sad video, because this begins the issue. Runners on first and second, nobody out. Merrill just hit the home run. Justin Lawrence comes in to relieve Jake Bird for the Rockies. Luis Ariz grounds into a double play, and then Fernando Tatis Jr. grounds out basically immediately, dare I say, which is like, again, like, I don't know what to say. Just really, really rough stuff. I don't know what to say, guys. It's just not great. Not great. That bat against Tatis, in fact, I'm pulling up right now, it was a first pitch ground out. I've said before, this is one of the problems with this team. And someone actually asked this question the other day, which has been like situational hitting with the Padres. And it has not been, it hasn't been bad. Let me be clear. There's just been with some players, namely Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr., have not always been great with some of the at-bats they've taken. A first pitch on a ball that's like low and inside is just not the type of thing I want Tatis swinging at, especially on the first pitch. He grounds out. Luis Ariz, like I mentioned, he also deserves blame here. He grounds into a double play on the second hit. That's kind of what the player he is, right? That's just kind of what he does. But it really stinks that he was just so aggressive at the plate at pitches that weren't even in the zone. And my biggest issue here is that Justin Lawrence, his final line is 2 innings, 3 walks, 1 K. And then Jalen Beeks for the Rockies is 1 inning, 3 walks, 0 Ks. No runs for either of them. They walked 6 Padres batters between those last few innings, and they just refused to get a hit. Like, that is why that game was so frustrating last night. Like, that, I honestly think that exemplified it really well. Rockies get 9 hits on the night, but it's all early. It's all against Randy Vasquez for the most part. Instead, they're terrible. So at bats like that is why I understand people are so frustrated, because it's like, what are you doing? So Tatis grounds out. Then you have the same thing occur. Like I said, this is 3 straight innings in which the crowd in San Diego is ready to go absolutely nuts. The Padres, since 2023, I actually looked up the stat, lead the league in most disappointing performances and sold-out crowds. I don't know if it was a sold-out crowd, but it looked like it was absolutely, everyone was going nuts. In the bottom of the 8th, you get a Cronenworth walk, Manny Machado lines out, because of course he does, right? Then you get a Jurickson Profar walk, then Xander Bogaerts gets a strikeout. And what I don't understand is just like, some of the pitches, all of these at-bats from Lawrence and Jalen Beeks, I wouldn't be surprised if there was like an expected ERA just for that game for those 2 relievers, and it would be like 8. You know what I mean? Like, it's insane that the Padres don't do anything. Jackson Merrill draws the walk, and then Luis Campusano, draws a 3-0 count, doesn't swing on the last pitch, which is fine. He wanted to take it the full way. Probably some nerves thing and all that too. I can understand that. But not coming up, swings at a pitch very, very low, hits it in center field. I appreciate that he made contact, unlike some other people on this team. I do appreciate that he made contact and at least got it off the ground. But him falling to his knee, just a bad at bat from Luis Campusano. I will say that he has been good, like very good in high leverage situations this year, so I don't want to totally kill him, but that's really rough, especially for me since I've been, singing the praises of Luis Campusano for so long. But in my opinion, a guy like Xander Bogaerts right there, and certainly what happens later, a guy like Manny Machado needs to come through, and it does not happen. And this keeps happening for this Padres team in very weird ways, but particularly for some reason against the Rockies. But seriously, horrific hitting in that one inning, with the Arise double play on the second pitch, and then a Tatis ground out on the first pitch. 3 pitches, guys. What has this pitcher been doing? What have Rockies relievers been doing? They've shown you they are not finding the strike zone, so why are you pressing? This is what I've been talking about with Tatis especially. You keep pressing. It's like he's looking for the home run always. That's what it feels like, at least to me. But ladies and gentlemen, that's not all. That's not all, ladies and gentlemen. We're not done yet. Believe me, we are not done yet. We're going to continue bashing on the Padres offense not coming through last night in just one second, guys. But first, I want to talk to you about the legendary, the ultimates, the phenomenal people over at Policy Genius. And life insurance is important. It's a good safety net for you and for your family, but trying to find the right policy obviously can be very, very difficult and very time consuming. I imagine you heard insurance and you immediately were like, oh no. Then you heard life insurance and he said, oh, no. You know what I mean? It gets very, very tricky out here. But with Policy Genius, it is the country's leading online insurance marketplace, and it saves you time and money so you can provide that financial safety net in a bunch of different ways. You can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams as well, but it's really great. They compare the top options from top companies, and they have a team of licensed experts on hand to help talk you through it. So don't worry about that if you're like a fool like me who has no idea when it comes to, frankly, money in general, and certainly when it comes to insurance related stuff. So it can be really tricky, but they are here to help you. So guys, go check that out at policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. Check that off of your to-do list. All right, come on, check life insurance off your to-do list. Go to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb to learn more. Go check it out. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the waning moments of this Locked On Padres podcast. And there's some tough ones. There's some tough ones, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I mentioned before, you have the bad Tatis at bat. You had the bad Arise at bat. 3 pitches between those two guys. When you're trying to come back into this game, and you just saw that Jackson Merrill, your rookie, the kid, is the one bringing you back into the game. And then Jurickson Profar the inning before with the 2-run home run. And how do you follow that up? The next inning, you have the Luis Campusano. He's unfortunately unable to come through. Absolutely pathetic to not just have the Arise Tatis at bat, but to then the next inning, they walked 3 batters, and you don't get a hit or even a sacrifice fly. Again, I do want to emphasize, though, Padres numbers this year, before we get into the Machado thing, the roast of Manny Machado, dare I say, before we get into that, it is worth noting that this is kind of like an outlier game in terms of the situations they were in. And what I mean by that is high leverage and runners in scoring position. First of all, the Padres this year, when it comes to just numbers with runners in scoring position, 262 batting average, which is the 14th best in Major League Baseball, and a 119 WRC plus, which is tied for the 10th best in Major League Baseball with Baltimore. That doesn't sound great, but it's really not that bad. It means that it's batting average, right? So it means getting hits. They're still able to draw walks. And a big thing about this, which is why runners in scoring position doesn't always tell you everything about a team, especially if you're middling like that. And I just told you they're tied with Baltimore. I think we all can agree that Baltimore is one of the best teams in baseball. So that tells you something, right? They're first in productive out percentage this year. If you go check out Baseball Reference, they are first or second. They might be second, maybe, based on, well, because of, how quickly stats can vacillate when it's this early on in the year. Maybe based on last night, having 3 straight innings that you didn't come through, maybe they went down to second or something like that, but that's much better. And last year, they were like 14th, right? So they were probably even lower last year, but I know that they are first this year. So keep that in mind. And also, when it comes to high leverage situations, so forget the runners in scoring position, this is just straight up the times that matter the most. 289 batting average, which is the fifth best among any team in baseball, and then 143 WRC plus if you want to go even further, which is the best in Major League Baseball. I'm bringing all this up as a silver lining to just remind everyone that this isn't a Padres thing that happened last night. It is, I would say, more of a why can't they play the Rockies and why are they just having trouble winning consecutive games? And then also a Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts Tatis thing. That's what I think last night was about. Does that make any sense? There's a little gray area that I'm trying to, arrive in, I think, if you guys catch my drift. But anyway, last inning of the game. Firstly, let me just say, Nick Lee, who's been on this show before, actually tweeted at me because we were talking through the game, basically being like, I'm nervous. I was like, I'm scared, Nick, when it comes to this. And he had actually tweeted earlier that day, so a little bit of a fortuitous moment, dare I say, by my guy Nick Lee. Here's his tweet from earlier yesterday. Xander Bogaerts shielded a lot of ire that would have gone Manny Machado's way. Out of 168 qualified hitters, Machado ranks 112th in average, 113th in slugging, 117th in WRC+, 123rd in OPS, and he's batting 154 in his last 7. And then he says, time for Manny to wake the F up and carry the Padres for once. This has been a thing since last year, which is why I don't understand that sometimes I've been getting some negative comments from people saying, like, what's wrong with you? Like, Manny, he still hit 30 plus home runs. And I'm like, I know. Like, this is why I did bring that up when I was talking about Manny Machado heading into the season. But it is worth noting that ever since this guy's gotten paid, he's been horrible when it comes to the clutch. And one thing that's worth bringing up as well is that Manny Machado has had a little bit of a clutch issue throughout his career, namely the fact that it's not just with the Padres as of late, not just with the Padres like when he first got there, but also like you look at his playoff numbers, not so great either. So while yes, we can blame maybe some of the injuries coming back from the shoulder injury, coming back from surgery and all that stuff, that's why he had to play DH for a lot of this year. Sure, we could absolutely say injury is why he's been performing poorly, but it hasn't only been on a just on a isolated just hitting the ball standard, because it's also been in high leverage situations. And if you've shown that you can hit 30 home runs like he did last year, then you can certainly just be okay with runners in scoring position. And he hasn't been for a long time now. He's hitting like 200 with runners in scoring position this year. And I think he was hitting like worse last year. I think he had like a 57 WRC plus in high leverage situations last year. So he was worse last year, but he hasn't been great this year. And that's concerning because you're like, what is going on with this guy? So in the bottom of the ninth, I was nervous as all heck. And guys, I was confident. I thought it was going to happen. I really did. I thought it was going to happen. Not only do you get a Ha-Seong Kim walk to start out the inning, Luis Arias does fly out, but then Ha-Seong Kim gets the second on a wild pitch. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, that it was a wild pitch that then allows Kim to get to second, the fast, speedy demon that he is. Then then Fernando Tatis Jr., he draws a walk. Doesn't really get, too much necessarily to hit, unfortunately, but it's a tough at-bat. He grinds it out, and that's the thing. While, yes, Tatis hasn't been going nuclear as we're all waiting for him to eventually go nuclear and really show up and really carry this team and be the MVP candidate we know he can be, he hasn't been too bad. Right, like he has had moments like this where he's able to draw a walk, which is good. And then Jake Cronenworth comes up, and frankly, Justin Lawrence seemed terrified to pitch to Jake Cronenworth. Throws all these pitches outside, basically, and Jake Cronenworth draws the walk. Not gonna lie to y'all, I want to know if you guys thought the same. I didn't know what was gonna happen next, but part of me was like, oh man, I really would have rather see Tatis or Jake Cronenworth put the bat on the ball. You can't blame them. They fight off. They have a really long at bat, all that sort of stuff. Like, I'm not really trying to hate on a player that drew a walk, right? But it is a little bit like, oh man, but Cronenworth has been so good this year, right? You know what I mean? But I do think that Tatis deserves a lot of credit for working a 7-pitch at bat. A lot of stuff that's, not necessarily in the strike zone, but you got to protect the plate. He did foul off some weird pitches that I think deserve some credit, right? But he also takes some pitches, didn't swing at bad stuff. The guy just wasn't finding the strike zone consistently. Mentioned the wild pitch. And then the at-bat to Jake Cronenworth, which I'm pulling up right now, the at-bat to Jake Cronenworth, every pitch except for one basically was just kind of not the area that he succeeds and, he thrives in. After the third and fifth pitches, everything else was super way outside. So he didn't really get a lot to hit. So I'm not blaming him for drawing walks. I'm just bringing up that, like, I saw that and I was a little bit frustrated. Then Manny Machado, the first pitch grounds into a damn double play. Like, are you kidding me? It's high and a little bit inside, not totally inside, but it is in the strike zone. And Machado throughout his career has been okay when it comes to being like a first pitch swinger. So I don't want to all of a sudden be the guy who's like, I like it when it works, but I hate it when it doesn't work, and you're wrong for that. But I do think it is worth pointing out, even if it's Manny Machado, even if he hits the ball hard, even if it was in the strike zone, I just think when you're a batter like him, and it's fine because he hits the ball very hard and he can hit 30 home runs. When you're someone like him who tends to put the ball on the ground a lot, and he does have the propensity, as we saw last year, and we certainly saw last night and a lot this year, to ground into double plays. Again, that's just that happens. Not everyone can be Mike Trout. It's fine. But when you know that, and when you just saw that this guy couldn't even throw a strike to the left, forget the numbers for a second. I don't care about the first pitch swing percentage and how he does with those. What I'm saying is this: with those runners all getting on base through walks and a wild pitch that allowed Ha-Seong Kim to get to second in the first place, and the last batter in Cronenworth, all pitches basically that couldn't be hit, you didn't give him anything. You should probably, in my opinion, wait a little bit more instead of swinging on the first pitch, and then also a really poor swing. That is the bigger deal, obviously, but to me, I do understand if people are frustrated that you swing at the first pitch and ground into a double play. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, you got to be kidding me. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, and he's been really dreadful this year, and, I do think that Xander Bogaerts has been covering for him. Not intentionally, I mean unintentionally, like, just most of the ire has been directed at Bogaerts, understandably so. And Manny Machado has been getting off scot-free. While last year, and the reason why I don't like that Manny Machado got off scot-free is that last year, it was specifically runners in scoring position, and he didn't have, until we found out later, the same excuse of the Spencer Strider fastball hitting Xander Bogaerts on the wrist, and the fact that he was transitioning from the American League to the National League, and the fact that most of just his base hitting skills were there with runners, aside from runners in scoring position. That's the reason Bogaerts had a poor season last year. But everything else was there, at least to a good, solid, good baseball player degree. Manny Machado was just bad ever since he got paid, and he doesn't have the excuse necessarily of having gone to a different team, first year of a new contract, anything like that. I understand the injury, but this is getting nuts, man. This is getting nuts. We've talked a lot about how his walk to strikeout ratio has always been something that makes him so good. That has decreased significantly. Yes, he still hits the ball hard. You know what I mean? He can still have a high batting average or a high-ish batting average, but he's been dreadful, and he deserves a lot of flack for last night's game. I just want to say that it's not on a team basis. It's not like the Padres have been like this in high leverage all year. That's why I illustrated the stats earlier. It's rough. It's rough. The only thing worth mentioning the last is that the bullpen was low-key great last night. Adrian Morejon, awesome stuff from Adrian Morejon. 3 1/3, no hits, no walks, 3 strikeouts. Again, my issue with him is the same that it's always been, which is that I don't trust the guy, because he has like moments like this where he can be a long inning reliever, but as soon as the high leverage comes in, like we saw in in Saturday's game when he walked like 2 or 3 batters, that's my problem. But even still, it also shows you that like his stuff can be really good. Jeremiah Estrada also shows up in this game. 1 inning, 2 Ks, no walks, no hits. Guys, he's got a 0 ERA. Jeremiah Estrada's looked amazing, and I think it's worth talking about that. And whiff percentage on his split figure fastball, 33.3%. I'm sorry, put away percent on his split finger fastball is 33.3%. 70% whiff rate on his split finger fastball right now. Dang. So that's really good. And then Yuki Matsui, while he does work into some trouble, is able to get out unscathed. Matsui has been scaring me a little bit lately. And if anyone's wondering, I am okay with keeping Estrada and Morejon not in the high leverage, because let's just be honest. One, we've seen Morejon struggle, and we almost saw Estrada struggle last week against the Cubs, when you saw like the crowds getting into it, runners around base, and then he was throwing some bad pitches. So I'm okay with giving the young guy a little bit of time acclimating to the major leagues first. But bullpen for the Padres was amazing last night, right? Like a nice bounce back for them, which is why I've told you guys I'm not super concerned about it. Because not only do I think it's going to get better, and not only do I think that the bloated stats from Santos and Matsui have been a thing lately, I just think that they have reinforcements and guys that might get better throughout the season and guys that they can call up if need be. So nice outing from the bullpen. Love the home run from Merrill. Love the fight that this team still kind of showed. But once again, the storyline is the Padres' big three. Last night, it was more Tatis and Machado, but mostly this year, it's been Machado and Bogarts. Last night, though, finally, I do believe Manny Machado is going to have some ire coming his way. We'll see if he steps up. But once again, really frustrating that this all happens against the Rockies. I figured that with the Rangers sweep, they swept the Rangers this past weekend, that the Rockies got their winning out of their system. You know what I mean? I would have, heading into the series, I would have been more scared if the Rockies hadn't won a game in a while, because that would have been like, okay, so of course it's going to come against us. Well, they just swept the Rangers, and now they've won 4 in a row. So, baseball, ladies and gentlemen. Record against the Rockies, by the way, these last 4 years. This year, they're 2-3. Last year, 9-4. 2022, 9-10. And then 21, 8-11. Just to give you an idea that, yes, the Padres against one of the worst teams in all of baseball, Oakland A's almost level tier, for some reason, don't play well against them. And that is a huge problem and something that needs to be discussed. I know it's a division rivalry and division games can be tough, but even still, you can't be that bad. And it's multiple years. That's why I said from 2021 onwards. It's not like this is just a one-year fluke thing. So, really frustrating, guys. Vent your frustrations below in the comments if you like, or DM me on Twitter at Javapeno if you want to talk about it, or maybe even have some of your questions, comments read on the show. But ladies and gentlemen, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Look forward to tomorrow's recap, where hopefully they don't have another dumb game like last night's. And until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.